Dave Aranda pitched himself to Mack Rhoades, and here's why it worked. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Bears fans. Welcome to another edition of Locked On Baylor. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. Interesting article on The Athletic this week, or from The Athletic this week, about Dave Aranda and kind of what this year means to him. And I would love to parse through that with you guys because I think it's got some real interesting stuff about obviously the context of this program, of this conference, and specifically how Dave Aranda factors in. And I think there's some very interesting nuggets in here as well. And I'm not done talking about Norchad Omier, man. I'm so excited about him, about this transfer class that Baylor's got coming in. I talked with Isaac Shade of the Locked On College Basketball podcast, and we took even a step further to break down Omier's game and some of the comparisons that he's getting, which I think are just terrific. But looking first at this Athletic story, and I'm going to kind of go through it with you. I know a lot of you probably couldn't read it with the paywall, so that's why we're here. And it is by Sam Kahn Jr. It's called "Baylor's Big Dave Aranda Bet: Can Another Offseason of Change Save a Sputtering Program?" And look, we've been in this. We know what the context is here as Baylor fans. It's 3 losing seasons in 4 years under this head coach, and it's one where if you don't look closely, there's not a lot of hope to draw from. I think that's fair. And even those of us who do look closely, it is still exactly what he calls it. It is a bet, a gamble, a risk, hitching your wagon, all of that. And it's a really well written article by Sam Kahn Jr. Of course, he's a really good writer. And he takes you through kind of those last days of the season. And in fact, I thought this was very interesting that Dave Aranda actually went to Mack Rhoades before the West Virginia game. Usually you meet with your AD after the final game of the season, but he actually went to Mack Rhoades before that. And he entered Rhoades' office carrying a paper-clipped 2-page document with notes, bullet points, and highlighted text. And for the next hour and a half, he detailed a plan to Mack Rhoades to revive a league-worst defense, retool on offense, and alter the program's roster-building approach. And of course, there are going to be many people that say, man, that's a guy that's desperate, just begging for his job. And kind of is. But I will say this. If you just take those points of what Sam Kahn Jr. just, outlined, revive a league worst defense. He's brought in 4 starters out of the portal on the defensive side. Okay. Like that. He's also taken a more hands-on approach with the defense. We know what he has done as a defensive coordinator in his career. It's very good. Retool on offense. You brought in, I thought, the best offensive coordinator that you could actually go out there and get, and Jake Spavital. You got him. You got a quarterback out of the portal. You got some receivers out of the portal as well. You're going to retool your running attack. You're going to retool the entire way you play offense. Retool, continuing to be the word. You're going to go to a more exciting style of offense than you've had in years past, and one that is, more exciting for players to play in, not just fans to watch, and alter the program's roster building approach. I mean, I kind of hit it in the other 2 points. How many of these guys have they brought in through the transfer portal? It was, I think, like 20 in his first 2 seasons. And now he is bringing in not only more than that, not just the quantity, but the quality. Again, he's bringing in guys that I see as starters on this team. Now, are they going to be starters on a 6-6 team? Hopefully. So it's not like they're winning the national championship, and he probably should have started this a few years ago when the rest of the country was, but he's doing it now. And so he's sticking to that plan that he outlined to Mack Rhoades in late November, early December. He is following through on, and it's obviously not been an easy thing to do. He's had to fire some coaches, which he's had to do his whole tenure here. And he has stuck to that plan. He's stuck to it. And I know it's one off season. They haven't even played a game yet. We're far away from that, but he has stuck to that. Khan also notes, which is obviously important. This is something we talked about towards the end of the season last year. And it's either they were sold on the vision, but Aranda's hefty buyout, which would have cost Baylor more than $20 million if he had been fired, also contributed to the decision to bring him back for one more year. Now, this is not quoting anybody in the story, but he did talk to Javon Overshone. He did talk to Mack Rhoades. He did talk to Dallas Baker. So clearly that's got to hold some weight to it. And I read this before I get to the next point of it, just the plan and everything. I found this very interesting because the way I read it, I think lends itself to saying that Dave Aranda might have more of a leash than this one season, is how I read it. And we're sitting here thinking, is this a guy who could get canned in September if things are going horribly wrong again? But reading that and the things that he said to Mack Rhoades kind of makes me think that, this has to go more than 1 year. These things take time. They talk about in the story about losing a senior class last year and having more freshmen play than anybody in the country. And part of the things that Dave needed to sell Mack on was, keeping this recruiting class and getting good recruiting classes down the line. And so I see that as, well, he can't fix all of that in one off season. And like we've talked about, we don't see a jump to a 9-win team in one season, most likely. So that's how I read it. Now, we did have Sam Khan Jr. on the Matt Mosley show on ESPN Central Texas, and I asked him that specific question. I say, hey, when you hear this from Mack, does that read to you like someone who has, no chance of getting fired in September or October? And Sam said, no, he didn't read it like that. That there is still an expectation here, that there is still a chance that this could go horribly wrong and Baylor has to cut their losses. So whichever side you are on the Dave Aranda aisle, there's hope there. If you're one of those people that just wants him fired no matter what, the author of this story who talked to the athletic director said that could still happen. If you're someone that wants to give him that chance and give him that full year chance, understandable. Then I think, for what it's worth, I think that reads as someone who could have more than 1 year down the line. So it's really interesting to see a guy go to his athletic director before the last game of the season and outline this. But I'm going to take this as a positive. A lot of people are going to take this as a negative, as a guy who's he thinks he's going to get fired and he should be. And he has no confidence in himself. I think he does have confidence in himself. He's man enough to say that he's done wrong. And yeah, a lot of coaches who did something wrong for 4 years would already be gone, but he outlined a plan. His boss bought into it and he is following through with it. As we watch in real time, within days of that meeting, he started following through with it. So whether it's going to work, I don't know. I'm not saying it is, but this is a guy who has outlined something and is sticking to it. And that to me is enough to say, all right, let's see how this plays out. How about passion, drive, patience? Okay, the things that bring home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, all of which we're going to see on the Baylor football team this year, hopefully, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into that Heisman Trophy winner and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. That is ebaymotors.com. There are some other intriguing parts of this article. And one thing that I think is the biggest to me is the context in which Sam writes this article. And basically the overarching, which he comes back to after several different points, is we are entering a new frontier in the Big 12. There is no more Texas. There is no more Oklahoma. And I know, trust me, I know that UT has not been the power the last few years that they have been, this year notwithstanding, that they have been in the past, right? And OU has dipped over that since Brent Venables came in. And so it's not like it was 10, 15 years ago when those felt like the only two teams and you just couldn't usurp them. I understand it's not been like that the last couple of years, but I'm old enough to remember 6 straight Oklahoma conference championships. So when you look, not just this year, not just next year, but years down the line, there isn't those two programs that are seemingly always up, always at the top of the conference. And so that we said this from day one when Texas and OU announced they were leaving. This leaves the Big 12 wide open. And at the time, that's summer of 22, Baylor's coming off one of their best seasons ever. They're the top 10 preseason ranked in 22. We're thinking this could be Baylor's conference to take over. And of course, it has not worked out that way. But what Sam Khan is saying in this is there's no reason why Baylor can't be the class of the new conference. No reason not. And that, of course, puts so much more importance on this decision to retain Dave Aranda. But, I mean, when you think about it in the simplest of terms, guys, Baylor's won three Big 12 championships in an 11-year span. Okay, no one else other than Oklahoma. So no one else that's going to be in the conference next year has done that. In fact, I think in Big 12 championships total, I think it's Baylor and Kansas State are the only ones with 3. So like that's huge. And he highlights the success from 2011 to 2021. Baylor had a .642 winning percentage, which includes a 1-win season and a 2-win season for new head coaches and scandal. Winning the Big 12 3 times and playing for another conference title in 2019. Okay, I did have it right. Baylor is tied with Kansas State for the most Big 12 titles of any remaining members of the conference, and that spanned 3 head coaches. I always say this, say what you want about Matt Rhule, but when Matt Rhule came in and took this team to a Big 12 championship and to a Sugar Bowl, I know they didn't win either, but took them to it. After the situation he took over, that proved to me that there's just not an excuse for Baylor anymore. This is a marquee job that you can go and win there. It wasn't just Art Briles lightning in a bottle. It's not. And we've seen Matt Rhule take them to a Big 12 championship game and a Sugar Bowl. We have seen Dave Aranda take them to both of those and win both of those. Okay, so there really is no excuse to, Baylor's not what it was 25 years ago. There's more money, there's more of a commitment, there's more of a brand name, there's more of a pedigree, and there's been more success in this decade and a half than any decade in Baylor football history. And he talks about, McLean Stadium opening in 2014. We've got the Fudge Center opening, $90 million facility. They've updated the indoor practice facility. There is just, and obviously campus and athletic complexes in general have gotten so much better in the last 10 or 12 years. There is no reason, no excuse for Baylor to be a doormat again. And I say that to say, this is why it's such a big gamble, because that's something to me that's not a paramount, like evergreen. Baylor has no excuses. If they go on to, keep losing under Dave Aranda, and then they hire someone else and they keep losing for another 4 or 5 years, which is a long way to go, then maybe it's not evergreen. Maybe we're back to a position where you can't win at Baylor. But right now, there is no excuse for it. And I know the administration would tell you that. The coaching staff would tell you that. Like that's no No secret there. Another part that really intrigued me, but to kind of close out what had intrigued me in the article is the whole person over player, right? We've heard that for years. That's a big Dave Aranda thing. And it's something that when you're winning, you can rally around so much, right? It's it's one of those where it's like, heck yeah, man, we're gonna win, and we're gonna win with class. And that was something that we could all get behind until the losses started coming, until there was no depth, until you couldn't recruit as well as you did before. All of those things led to, maybe that's not what we should be doing here. It's a great thought, but maybe we're thinking about it too much. In fact, Mack Rhoades has said that in no uncertain terms of sometimes it has frustrated me that we haven't been able to bring in some players that are incredibly talented because they don't have a perfectly clean record. They're not criminals, they're not thugs, but we can't do that. They call it a conservative approach in this article. And he points out, Sam Khan, a Dave Aranda quote from a couple years ago in 2022, where he says, if there's 10 kids within the state of Texas that are playing football and have the grades to go to college, probably 3 of them fit at Baylor. And I don't know how true that is, but it seems like an excuse for not bringing in top end talent. And he goes on to say, the Sam Khan does, not Dave Aranda. The program emphasized person over player, which became an oft-used hashtag on Baylor football social media that Aranda worked into the fabric of the program. But 2 former staffers granted anonymity to discuss the program without permission from their current employers hypothesized that Aranda went too far in that direction when it came to recruiting, overlooking potential impact players with minor issues in the efforts to find ones with impeccable character. I think that hits the nail right on the head. You know, we don't want thugs here. We don't want criminals here. We don't want, what happened here 7 or 8 years ago now. But you can't have total choir boys. That's just not how 15, 16, 17-year-olds work, especially ones with a ton of pressure that have a ton of talent. So you can't be quite as conservative, I think. In any way I say this, it's trying to make me sound like you could bring in whoever you want. I'm not saying that, but it's one that you can't just hinge it all upon. And Javon Overshone, who's director of football operations, had a good quote in here that says, person over player doesn't have to be forward facing if it is who you are. Perfect. Because there are plenty of programs, football, basketball, any sport in this country that are doing person over player. They're not doing it to the point where it's hurting their team most of the time or hurting their program as a whole. And they're not shoving it down your throat. They do it and you see it by not having scandals. And that's all. That's all. By the way, another thing that they had talked about in here is Javon Overshone talked about doubling. They said they have doubled their NIL funding since last year. So we heard towards the end of the season how well NIL is doing. And from the sources I've heard within the program, that is actually true. And, you're starting to see a little bit of the effects of that in the transfer portal. Baylor's probably never going to bring in the top SEC transfers, but you're bringing in some pretty good mid-major transfers. And we're seeing a recruiting trail get better and better for Baylor for the next 2 years. So I would say that is probably going to help. I don't know how much it has helped so far. I think a little bit, but that is going to help for sure down the line. So NIL up, person over player a little bit down. We're still doing it, but not shoving it down your throat. In fact, good journalism by Sam Khan, who said the Baylor Twitter accounts have not tweeted out hashtag person over player since December. So that is out of the lexicon. So I don't want to hear anybody in the comments using that excuse. Okay. Because apparently that is done. You got your wish. All right, y'all's favorite part of the episode here, because we got to pause to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. You talk about that all the time, and I do because I love it, okay? In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments. You're going to work together, build up each other's boards, and the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much to get, okay? unique stickers that you can trade with friends, complete albums for big prizes. You got cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. You've even got emojis for taunting your friends, your other friends, when you smash their buildings, heist their vaults, take all their money, okay? Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day, constantly changing tournaments. There's always some new timed events. They got massive multipliers for everything you win. They've got rent frenzies. There is always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store, okay? Google Play or the App Store for Monopoly Go. Today's episode is also brought to you by Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. So whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for some extra guidance, like me, you find out how expensive it is to live in Waco and you need some more cash, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the number one finance destination. They produce a holistic look at the financial news cycle. They got breaking news, original editorials, analyst ratings, independent research, all kinds of data for you to make the right decisions. You can securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth. That includes your 401k and your other investments as well. So with a community with over 90 million users each month, the real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. Once again, that is yahoofinance.com. Going to close it out with a little discussion I had with Isaac Shade on Locked On College Basketball. Isaac knows Norchad Omori. Thinking about Cliff there. Norchad Omier very well. He's covered them in the ACC, covers North Carolina. So he got actually to see Norchad Omier a lot and had a pretty cool comparison, if you're a college basketball fan, to what Norchad can bring. So let's toss it over there.
Well, apparently Norchad Omier really likes the color green because he's headed from Miami to Waco, Texas, along with a fellow ACC member who we talked about previously, Mr. Jeremy Roach. We're joined again today by our good buddy, Mr. Cam Stewart, the host of Locked On Baylor. Cam, this is great news for Scott Drew. I love it. I'm excited for it. The Bears miss out on Adu, Cliff Omori, others. How does it feel to lock in a big?
Oh, man, it's great news. And honestly, if you hadn't mentioned him in the open, it would have been made for my great line, which was, I was as excited about this Omier. I haven't been this excited about a transfer portal commitment since Jeremy Roach. How about that?
We can fix that. Let's fix it. Here you go. Cam Stewart, how excited are you about this Norchad Omier news?
Oh my God, Isaac, it's the most excited I've been about a transfer portal commit since Jeremy Roach, which was like 3 weeks ago. This is awesome. It is awesome. I mean,
very seriously, what does Omier's addition bring to the Bears?
It feels pretty close to the final piece of the puzzle. Now, I do think Baylor is going to bring in one, maybe two more guys here. Like, I mean, they've got, I think, 3 slots from my math, and you know, they needed a center and they needed a wing, and Norchad Omier gives you a little bit of both, actually. But then you got to worry about the depth. So I was saying on my show, like, you know, yeah, Omier could play some small ball big. Like, he could play some small ball 5. I wouldn't be surprised to see that at all this year. But if either he or Josh Ojamwuno gets hurt, then you're back to square one, and you don't have any centers, which is where we were a couple days ago. But I just love what he brings. You know, you and I had talked about Cliff Omori, and I know that's someone you looked into a lot, and Adu to a little bit of extent as well. But Omori, what I loved is just brings a tenacity with him, right? Like, ultra good rebounder, shot blocker, gets in that grit and grime, which Baylor has not had the last couple of years. And Mark Vital was a guy I think of. He was crucial to that national championship team. And with Norchad Omier, you have that. Like, he brings all of that. He's played 4 seasons of college basketball, and he has led his conference in offensive rebound percentage 4 times. He's been an all-conference player 4 times. He has been the defensive rebounding percentage leader in his conference 3 of the 4 years. So he's at 6'7", you're like, that's not our big. But what he does is he brings you the things that a big needs to bring. You know, I think back to Mark Vital. You had this plays over his size, kind of gritty, tough, defensive minded, and great offensive rebounder. You put that next to a Flo Thamba, who is okay as a center, but nothing to write home about. Like, you can get away with a lot. You can play Baylor's brand of basketball and still play some pretty good defense while still having that. So that's what I think Norchad Omier gives you. And like the Jeremy Roach signing, Isaac, I was honestly, I didn't even think about Amir because I didn't think that Baylor was in on a guy like this. I thought the same thing about Roach. I was like, of course that makes perfect sense. I just didn't expect it, but this is what we're living in now. Baylor's got NIL going well. Scott Drew is Scott Drew, and the program speaks for itself. And we're getting some of the best guys out there.
And I loved both of those because I feel like, Cam, so often in both high school recruiting and transfer portal recruiting, we're all following it and we're all in on the minutia and who they follow on Instagram and whose tweets are liking. And then you get kind of a surprise like this, and it's like, yeah, let's get it, right? Now, like, let me add a statistical fun thing to all that you just said about Norchad Omier. Cam, you might be aware of this, maybe not. In the past 2 seasons in the ACC, precisely 2 players have averaged a double-double in both of those seasons.
Can I guess the other one?
Please.
Is it your man Armando Bacot?
It is. It's my man Armando Bacot and Norchad Omier. Literally the only 2 players to average a double-double each of the last 2 seasons in the ACC. And in fact, there was only one other instance of a player in the ACC averaging a double-double those past years. And so, folks, as Cam just said, do not mistake a lack of size for lack of impact with Omier, because this, like, he's not exactly the same as DJ Burns from NC State this past year, other than in that undersized, like, don't mistake what he can do. And frankly, he's a much better rebounder than DJ Burns is, clearly averaging a double-double. And so I think this is a massive addition for you guys, Cam. And so let me ask you this. I know you said it seems right now like there's probably some more pieces to add to the puzzle, to the mix for Baylor. But if the season started today, what would your lineup prediction be for Baylor?
Well, first I got to say, I love that stat you pulled out, because, like, that's so Baylor. Everybody in the country, all the casuals know who Armando Bacot is, right? They should. He's a tremendous player. And to have someone who's on that statistical plane, who's played in the Final Four, like that not, I mean, of course, many college basketball fans know him, but to kind of sneak out with that is incredible. But looking at this lineup right now, the tough part is the backcourt, right? And so I'm just going off a limb. I'm going 3-guard set. Saw a lot of that in 2020, 2021, 2022. So I'm looking at a Jeremy Roach. I'm looking at a VJ Edgecombe, and I'm sticking with a Jaden Nunn. I think there's going to be lots of shouts for Langston Love, who was going to be the 6th man of the year in the Big 12 before he got hurt. There's going to be a lot of shouts for Rob Wright, one of the best point guards in the entire country, coming in as a freshman. But I look at those 3. None started every game for Baylor last year. I look at those 3, and right now I've got Josh Ojanwina at center and straight up power forward Norchad Omier, man. And we're rolling. And we're rolling to probably a top 5, top 8 preseason ranking with that. But I don't think they're done. But you asked for today. Right,
no, that's what I'm saying.
May 7th.
This is a snapshot in time. As we even peek behind the curtain, as we record, it's Monday, May 6th, 10:25 Eastern Standard Time, 2024 in the year of our Lord. But Cam, like, what's interesting to me about that is Omier has played the 5 at Miami the past 2 years. I'm in, like, some of these guys that are like more traditional centers, you couldn't slide over to the 4. Omier's skill set, to me, translates very well that way. And I'm really curious, especially with the 3-guard lineup around him, of how that happens. And then what I love about it is, regardless of that 5-man guard rotation, you got 2 dudes coming off the bench for Baylor. And so I love that depth even beyond that starting 5. And
by the way, a top 50 guy coming in on the wing as well off the bench, Jason Asamoto, who's kind of a guy that gets forgotten about because he's not high up as Wright and Edgecombe, but a guy who could shoot. And so you kind of bring in a different kind of forward when you come in with him. Yeah. I'm contractually obligated to stand up for him. He's a Massachusetts guy.
Honestly, I'm a big Jason Asamoto fan, so I'm so glad you brought him in. to this. But so Cam, you said like, hey, as you see it, top 5, top 8 preseason. And honestly, you could be top 8 and be 4th or 5th best in the Big 12. That's where things are at right now. That's how wild the top end of this league is going to be next year. And so, Cam, if you had to stack up, not even nationally, just Big 12, where would you put Baylor in the Big 12 mix ahead of next year?
Honestly, I mean, you could be top 5 and be 4th in the Big 12. And I think preseason anyway. And honestly, I'm seeing them as a 4th right now,
okay,
which might peeve some Baylor fans a little bit. But I just think of, Kansas, obviously with the additions, they could be preseason number 1. Houston, I think there is a bit of feast or famine with Houston, which is going to seem weird, but they bring back basically everyone but Shed. And I think Shed is no hot take here, a huge part of that operation. And so that could, they could just kind of pick up where they leave off and because they got a great coach and some great players that have been playing together for years, but they could slide. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but they could slide. And Iowa State, I think people forget about because they didn't make huge additions like some of the other teams like Kansas and Baylor have, but that's a really solid basketball team right there. So right now I have them at 4th. But I mean, I think those top 4 are in like a top tier. I think each of those 4 teams can win the Big 12.
That's right. And we're not even naming Arizona, which
right.
Folks, let's remember this is part of the Big 12. Like it's stupid, Cam. I love it and I can't wait. Now, last thing, and then we'll get you out of here. After the Big 12 semifinals, I remember sitting downstairs at the press conference with Scott Drew and I forget who, but also Caleb Lohner. And I remember seeing this dude talking about how excited he was for the NCAA tournament and everything that was coming ahead of him. But now Caleb Lohner is transferring within the Big 12 to Utah. He's going to be a great Ute, Cam Stewart.
Yeah.
But not on the basketball court. My man Caleb Lohner is going to play football for the Utah Utes. What do you make of this wild turn?
Well, there's 2 wild things to it, right? First, he's just making the switch to football, which we'll obviously talk about. The second thing is, before he came to Baylor, he played at BYU. And so now you've got BYU and Utah on your resume, which I think is very interesting.
With a little Baptist squeezed in the middle.
Right. That rivalry's a bloodbath, man. BYU, Utah, they do not like each other at all. So that's the weird part. But I would say this, when you saw him at the podium, because I've had this thought before, when I see the Baylor basketball team out there and I say, okay, one of these guys has to play football, I'll probably pick a Caleb Lohner. Like he's big, he's broad-shouldered. He did have some problems at times corralling rebounds, using 2 hands. So that'll be interesting for a guy who's going to go play tight end. But September 7th, Baylor at Utah on the gridiron. So you could have a year where you play Caleb Lohner in football and then again in basketball because he is going to try it. So I think that's wild. But look, all the power to him. We're rooting for Caleb, except when he plays against Baylor.
Cam, this is what makes the transfer portal awesome. I can't wait to see it. Really curious to see how all these pieces fit in Waco, bringing in Jeremy Roach, bringing in Norchad Omier, a whole host of uberly talented freshmen.
I might have to change my prediction. I might put them to like 2nd because we just keep talking about them and I'm so bought in.
I love that you're
all Kansas and them and everyone else.
I love that I'm getting you there, Cam. Let's go. Folks, for Cam Stewart, Isaac Shade, Cam, thanks so much for joining us. Have a good one.
Anytime. Well, thank you to Isaac for having me on. I always appreciate going on that show. It's a ton of fun. And thank you all so much for making it your first listen today and every day. Be sure to like and subscribe. Tell your friends, okay? Ring that notification bell. We drop videos every weekday. We're the only place that's bringing you nothing but Baylor athletics content every single day that's not coming straight from the university. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.